Okay, so today we're going to today the due date is textures, right? So I'm going to show you one more time how to do textures, just in case you've forgotten. And then the next step is going to be rendering. So rendering is due. Let me see. I think next week. We finish with this scene next week, and this weekend is. Yeah, this weekend is 4th of July, so you guys are probably going to be in another dimension here, thinking about other things, fireworks and hamburgers and hot dogs, hopefully. So July 4th is when the renders due, which should be next Tuesday. So today, or tomorrow actually, is the texture milestone. And then the 7th, we're done with the scene of the Lego. So, if you want to get ahead and get the job done before the weekend, before you have 4th of July, go ahead. So you're not cramming on Monday to get your scene finished and textured. Well, textures due tomorrow. But yeah, I recommend you kind of. Rather be early, get it done beforehand, and if you need to do some touch-ups, you have Monday to do it instead of over the weekend when everybody's partying and you're not going to be you don't want to be working when everybody's partying. That's not very fun. So if you can, go ahead and finish early, but if you've forgotten how to texture your stuff, I'm going to show you really quick. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about rendering. And there's a few questions that some of you have asked me about rendering, and that's great. So we're going to say we want to texture this. I'm going to open the UV editor. So the very minimum for tomorrow is the chest and the head of the Lego. So here's the chest. All you needed to do, basically, if you started with a box, was say unfold. Let's see. Where are my UV tools? Whoops. My UV tools keeps disappearing for some reason. I think they're in here. Unfold. So we started with a cube. We extruded it a few times. We just needed to extrude it. Once you have it, you select your UVs, like you selected to send me the UVs. Take a snapshot. Just tell it where to go. Let's say we'll call it shirt and tie. Save it. You have to tell it the size and the format. So this is PNG. The lines are black. If you want to make them white instead, you can. You just have to pick a color here. It can be any color you want. It doesn't matter. And then you say apply. Oh, and this is going to the wrong folder. Let me find the right folder here. I'm just gonna dump it here. I'm gonna call it shirt and tie and say apply and close. So now I can open I know it's on that folder. I can open Photoshop or something else to paint it. I should have used Clip Studio or Krita or something else. Photoshop takes a long time to open. Alright, so we're gonna say open. Where is it? Desktop 1630. Hit S here so I can find it faster. Shirt and tie, there it is. Open it. There's my lines. They're red. I just need to make another layer underneath so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm gonna hit G to get the bucket or gradient, and X to switch colors, and there's my lines. Now I can quickly paint a tie in here. So
exactly like my texture.
it does?
Yep.
Yeah, great. Alright, so now that I have my drawing, let's say this is finished, I'm going to turn off my guides because I don't want my model with lines all over it. And I'm going to save this. Hopefully I painted it on the right faces. I didn't even check. So let me go into face mode here. Yeah, that's the right faces. Okay, great. So I'm just going to save it. Save on my computer. I wanted to overwrite the other one. I don't know why it's asking me for this. Probably because it's a Photoshop file. Just going to save as a JPEG. Highest quality possible. Go back to Maya, and this is the part everybody forgets, so please pay attention. Go and select my object and say assign new material, and you would pick it according to what you want. If it's shiny or not shiny, you know, Blaine is shiny, kind of blurry, Lambert's matte, Phong is sharp shininess, and Phong is kind of metal. So I'm just gonna pick a Blaine, and if I look at my attributes, it's on the very last tab. If you don't see the material in here, there's a bunch of tabs. It's because you have history. You can either delete the history by hitting this button, or you can also right click on your object and say material attributes. That will show you what the materials of that object are. I mean what the attributes of the material assigned to the objects are. So whatever object you have selected. So it showed up right here, and I want to replace the color channel. The color channel, I want to replace this gray with a file I made. So this window will change to say, where's that file? You just have to find it. What do you call it? Short and tidy JPEG. There it is. You can click on it once so it gives you a preview, and then say open. If you don't see your textures here, it's because this button's turned off. So this will show you textures, or you can hit 6 on your keyboard. 5 is just solid gray. Everything's gray, so if you're working and textures are bugging you, they're too distracting, you hit 5. If you want to see textures, you hit 6. If you want to see lights, you hit 7. And this is a really terrible preview of the lights. So okay, so the face and the shirt is due today at the very least. Like I mentioned, you should try to get as much as you can done, so this weekend you can party and not worry about it. And on Monday, if you need to, you can do some touch-ups, and then Tuesday you turn it in next week. So if you want to preview how your scene is looking, again we go to Arnold render view, hit play. This will give you kind of a preview of what's going on, and I can't remember what I was doing with the lights here. But anyway, so this is the last part where it comes to rendering. So rendering is when Maya calculates all the lights. This Arnold render view gives you a preview that's fairly close to the actual render, but it's also very noisy. You can see a lot of points and things on it, you know, a lot of noise and junk, especially if your lights are kind of weaker. So if the dimmer the lights, the more noise you'll have to deal with. So we're going to try to fix that. So you have on the top here, you see a bunch of movie slates. That's what they look like. The blank one is an actual render. So when you click on that, Maya does the finished render, calculates everything for you. The one with the cogwheel or the gear here, this is the render settings. So I'm going to click on that, on the render settings, and this window will show up. The first thing it's going to show me is where are those images going to. So it has the wrong path here, so I need to change that. So if you remember from the beginning of the semester, you had to always set up a project. I didn't set up a project for this scene, so I'm going to do it now. I'm going to go to File, Set Project, and if you have made a folder, you can just pick it. I think I did make a folder, and I can't remember which one it is, to be honest. I should name them differently than Lego. It's too generic. But I'm gonna say it's this one. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's that one. I'm gonna say set. It's gonna ask me if I want to create. This kind of saves your preferences to that folder. You say create default workspace and it'll be just fine. But you'll see the path on your saving here. The path we're saving, it updated, and it should have also updated here on the top. Then underneath here you see the file output. So right now it's set to EXR. That's the fanciest format of file you can use nowadays. It's used in movies and all that. Or you can pick something else if you want to make a light file. You can do JPEG or PNG, anything you want. For easy to submit it to me, I would say just change it to JPEG. Make sure the quality is cranked up. Then if you go a little bit lower here, it'll say the image, how big the image is. So by default, it will be set to 960 by 540, which is fairly small. So your image will be pretty pixely. If you remember, we are working usually on 1920 by 1080. So let's go HD 1080. So there it is, 1920 by 1080, or you can just type it here. You can just type 1920 by 1080. That's the format we want this file to be. It's asking you what camera you're rendering. If you have a perspective or another camera that you've made, you can pick it from here. If you're making an animation, you know, right now we're not making an animation yet, but if you were, by default the file output is set to a single frame. So if you wanted to render an animation, you would change it in here to name, number, and extension. So name of the file, which is Lego Mesh, the number, so Lego Mesh 1, extension would be JPEG. So Lego file, Lego scene, or Lego Mesh, sorry, Lego Mesh number 1, JPEG, Lego Mesh number 2, JPEG. You know, that's how you save stuff on an image sequence. Then you put it together in After Effects. But we're not doing that just yet, so you only need to render a single frame. Once you have all these settings ready, you're good to go. So if I click the render button, and this will take a little bit longer than your regular Arnold render viewer, I guess. So let's give it a minute, and you might still see some noise and specks of dust, and I think some of you run into this problem. Holly, did you have that problem that you had like specks of lights sitting here and there? Holly, can you hear me? I know sometimes when the computer's rendering, the mic shuts off for some reason. Can you guys hear me? I hope. Yeah. Oh, was it Collier or Clayton? Who had that problem with the lights giving you like little specks? Oh, Clayton. Sorry. So what you do, the lights are calculated by samples. So what does that mean? Let me close this. So a light, you know, when it comes out of here, it will put a cone, and the cone will have shadows, you know, behind these boxes and other things that are on the scene. The problem is when it calculates them only once, it makes a lot of noise. So that is the samples of the shadow. So, and the weaker the lights, the more shadows there is. So the more it needs to calculate. But if it's only calculating them once, it gets a really noisy result. So I'm going to show you how to fix that now really quick. Clayton, you want to share your screen so people can see what the problem you're running into?
Sure, just give me a second.
Okay.
Try to render it first.
Yeah, go ahead and render first. So you might see like a lot of noise on your scene, or specks of light, and there's a couple ways to fix them. One is a general way that affects the whole scene, which is messing with the camera. And the second one, if that doesn't take care of it, is going light by light in your scene and fixing each light, giving it more samples to calculate.
Right. It's almost there.
Okay. So the rest of you might run into this issue, so it's really good that Clayton has had the problem too. So you can see, because I was hoping it was gonna show up on mine, but it's not that noisy yet, I guess.
That just took forever.
Anybody doing anything fun for the 4th of July? Eating hot dogs, hamburgers, blowing up things? Nothing, huh? So all quarantine. Maybe fireworks. So I didn't catch the other one. Somebody else typed something, but I didn't catch it.
I stopped it.
Okay, go ahead and share your screen then. Okay, so here's Clayton, and you see on the pillar especially, you see a lot of white specks, right? So Clayton has done a finished render, you know, that you get by clicking on the small movie slate on the top, and you have the same movie slate on the render window. So now if you open the render settings by clicking on the movie slate with the gear on it on the top, next one over, yeah, that one. See, there's a few tabs in here. The one that says Arnold Renderer, see the tabs on top? Yeah, a little bit under that, yeah, that one. This is sampling for the camera. So this will be a general fix for the whole scene. So right now you see there's like 6 sliders there. The first one says camera AA. So camera AA means camera anti-alias. So a lot of the time when you render things in the digital format, you know, you see pixels, and that is a dead giveaway of digital art. So anti-alias means it blurs out that stair stepping that you see on Pixels. So crank up the first slider a little bit up, go up to 5, let's say. Yeah, then go too far up, because the longer you do, the more you do, the longer it takes to render. Now move that window aside a little bit, the render settings. And if you remember how I show you, you can render a region only. So yeah, so before you click on that, hit escape. Hit escape. It'll stop. So kind of guess where the pillars were, and just click and drag a little square. Yeah, probably right there. Now click that render region button. So yeah, go ahead and click it. There we go. So what Clayton did when you click and drag on your render window, you create a little region on it, that red square. And if you click that button where Clayton has his mouse pointer, it's just gonna render that little square. So you don't have to wait for the whole thing to render to see if it fixed it or not. Let's see. Go a little bit higher up. Like select a little square a little higher up. I think it was. Yeah, and do it again. So we'll see if that got rid of that speckle noise. So a lot of the time, just doing this, just cranking the camera up, will fix the problem. Sometimes you have to go in the light attributes, and you'll see each light has an attribute that's called samples, and you can crank it up. And you want to do it slowly. You don't want to, pick all your lights and crank the samples to all of them up, because it means it has to calculate more times. So it looks like it's gotten rid of some of the speckles, not all the way there, right? Not completely. So I think the other thing it might be on the samplings, on the render settings. There's the sliders that you see under camera AA or camera anti-alias on the render setting window. Yeah, that one. So diffuse is when you see specks of colors or noisy colors. Speculars is when you see noisy reflections. Transmission is when you see noisy glass, like if you had glass in your scene and you're seeing a lot of noise on the glass. SSS is subsurface scattering. Volume indirect is volume lights. So I think it might have a little bit of diffuse noise. So crank that up to 4. And you can also save the image if you can mouse over. It looks like a little picture of mountains with the sun on the top of that window. Yeah, that one. That one will save the image so you can compare it. So if you click on that, you'll see a bar showed up on the bottom of the window. So you can, after you render, you can slide through it and compare the old to the new. So make a little square right by the lights, actually, where all that noise is. A little bit bigger. Yeah, right there. And do another region render, and we'll see if it looks better. If not, we'll have to mess with the light by itself. So see, the more samples we have for things, the longer everything takes. That's why you want to go slow with it. You don't want to go crazy over it. There it goes. It looks like it's gonna be cleaner this time.
Because the pillars and the little Lego guys have a little reflectivity on them because they're plastic. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, there's a class specifically for rendering and compositing that we get really picky with this, but you know, I think that results is pretty good right there. I would call it good. You know. But thank you. I'm gonna share my screen now, Clayton, but that's how you fix that. If you had still a lot of noise, let me share my screen. Thank you, Clayton. Let's see. Share content. If you had a lot of noise still, you would have to go light by light. So you would pick your light, go to its attributes. So you see here the attributes of the light. I just click on this button to turn them on. On the Arnold menu part here, this is samples for each light. So in here, if I were to turn off all the other lights and just leave this one on, I can see if that's the one that's I would do a render and then see if that's the one that's making the noise. And if it is, then I would crank cap the samples on this one, you know. And then you would have to go light by light, you know. So okay, so this light, maybe crank up the samples on that light. Is it some other light that's over here somewhere, you know. The best way to do it is to turn off all lights and just leave one light on. So how do you do that? You have the list of lights here on the outliner, so you can shift select them. And if you go to the channel box, so I just click on the little channel box, this button right here that says visibility, you can turn it on or off. Why can I not turn it off? There we go. Off. Now all the lights are off. I could turn on just this light and do a render and see if that's the one that's making the noise, that's giving me all the grain and all the speckles, you know. If it is, I would say, oh, I need to fix that light. So you can wait for it to render. Like there's noise back here, so you can hit escape so it stops rendering. Then you would go to your samples for that light, crank it up, you know. Then go back here, maybe select this region and render that region, and you know, it didn't much of a difference. But this is how you would do it. You know, we're not gonna spend too much time on this because this is for like the rendering class, rendering compositing. If you were working on a movie, you know, this would be really important, because what happens in a movie, it would have some type of noise, like the film, if it's actual film, or the video will have a tiny little a bit of noise when you record a movie, and cameras are getting better and better, but it will always have a little bit. So if you have your model that has a noise pattern that's different and it's going to go on that movie, let's say you're working on Transformers, so you model one of the robots and they put it on top of the film plate, and your robot has a different noise than the background, it's gonna stick out like a sore thumb. So what they do is, you want your model completely clean of noise. They put it on the film plate, and then either in After Effects or Nuke or Fusion or any compositing software, they add noise on top to match the background noise. So you usually want all the noise gone, but that's for another class, since we are not working in movies right now. This is just learning to render 3D. This will be fine. You can just do it with the render settings and the camera. You know, this will be fine. If it is too much, you know, you can ask me, or you can play with the lights, you know, turn them all off and go one by one and say, okay, I'm gonna turn this one on now, see if that's the problem child, or if it's this one. You know, you just have to go light by light. That's how we used to do it before. Just a few years back, like 3-4 years back, no software had this type of thing. No software had any kind of preview like that. You would have to render, wait for it to render, see if it worked, do a change, wait for it to render again. You know, it's really, really slow and annoying. So this stuff, the real-time previews are, you know, when I saw it, I was like, it blew my socks off. A few years back, you know, and now every software is trying to implement it. You know, I think the first one that came up with it was Lightwave. Then we had Maya came up with Arnold. There was another one called Octane that you could add to any software. And Blender has Eevee now, so pretty soon we'll be doing everything on real time. So hopefully that day comes soon. But for now, we had to, you know, still deal with the rendering, especially if it's for animation and not for a game engine. But yeah, that's what I'll cover today. So to recap, I showed you how to add a texture. You just have to have your UVs done, paint it, and then create a new material and add the, on the color channel, you add the texture you painted. I also have show you how to render, which is clicking this button. If you have problems, if you go to command, you can change the path where it's rendering to, where the image is saving to, by going to File, Set Project. It'll change the folder where the file is rendering to. You want to change the size of the picture so it's not too small. If you want to see a preview of the picture, like what the camera sees, this button up here, it looks like a circle with a white square around it. This is the resolution of the camera, and this is what the camera is seeing. So I would say, okay, I need to clip so I don't see the edges of my scenery. So I would zoom in closer, you know. Okay, now that's probably good. So I don't see the edges of my scenery, like where the walls end and the floor end. So, but by next week you'll have to render. You'll have to render twice. You'll have to have at least 2 angles of your scene. You know, the best angles you can find. So, if you have noise on your scene, you can fix it with the Arnold sampling settings here. You can just play with the sliders. Don't go crazy with them because it'll make the render super slow. On the render window, let me just hit escape so it doesn't render. There is can make the window smaller. There. This will render the whole window. This will render a region. You just have to click and drag to select what region you want to render. This saves your images so you can compare them with the bar here, and then this deletes them. So you can also save your image from here. You have to say File, Save Image. And one thing you have to remember to change always is select Color Manage. Because if you save a raw image, it will be super dark, which you don't want. You just want to switch it to Color Manage and then save it. So that is it. So since you guys probably have a lot of textures to work on, and maybe some of you are still finishing modeling things for your scene, we're not gonna meet tomorrow. We're gonna meet on Wednesday. And on Wednesday, I'm just going to look at your progress. See how far your scenes are. You can show us your spectacular scene, and that's what we'll do from here. Any questions so far? Let me get out of my screen share so I can see the chat here. No questions? So Nanette is gonna be working and doing fireworks.
I have like a weird specific question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a hotkey or a quick way to reset an object's origin to the center of its geometry?
Yeah, it's actually where is it? So is this button up here? Let's say this. The pivot is like back here. So the pivot is back there for the head. This button up here, this one, will center the pivot. So now it's in the middle of the head. Or it's under modify center pivot.
Does that also change the pivot for like rotation?
Yes, so it'll be, if you hit rotation, it'll be on the same spot. If you want to change it, let's say I want to move, let me separate the arms here. Let's say I wanted to move the arm and the hand, so I'm gonna, those are also combined. Just 1 second, there we go. Okay, so let's say I wanted to move these two together, so I'm gonna combine them. And when I hit the pivot point, is not where the shoulder is like on the middle here. So if you hit D on your keyboard like once, you'll see your move tool change to something different. This is the edit pivot point tool, I guess. So now I can move it to where I want it. Maybe give it a little bit of the angle that the arm has. And now when I hit D again, I'm out of the pivot point edit and I'm on regular move and rotate. So now my pivot point's edited. Okay.
You combine objects like that, does it mess with the UVs?
It shouldn't. I think when you I seen people animate. I seen a problem with people animating things and trying to UV the textures afterwards, and that's when it messes them up. So
like for rigs, like
yeah,
they weight painted and stuff.
yeah, that's usually when it messes them up. So usually you want to get all your modeling and UV done beforehand, and then then do all the rigging and stuff.
The reason I was interested in that is because, like, if I model a cube or like that torso, it has its own UV map. But if you combine it with another mesh, what happens like between those two UV maps?
I don't think it should matter. Let's see what happened here. So these are my UVs for the torso. These are the UVs for the arm, which is nothing. Let's do an automatic UV here, see what happens. Okay, so there's the arm. Now, there's the torso and the arm. Let's combine them. They're overlapping, but they still have the different material. So this one still has the painted one. The arm, or the polygons for the arm, still have the gray material. So it didn't mess it up actually. It's just showing me both together. Huh? Yeah, as long as they have different materials, they're fine.
So it seems like Clarissa had a question. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, who else has questions? I don't know if you can talk or if I need to look at the chat here. Oh, how to do that cloudy effect in my background. That's pretty easy. Yeah, but let's take care of yours really quick. It won't take long. So foggy backgrounds. So if you go to let's see, if you go to the render settings, the same window, and down here is environment. And let me just get rid of this. So I already had one in there, but if you say break connection, it'll be gone. Environment, you can on atmosphere, you can put volume atmosphere or an AI fog. So the AI fog is kind of like from the background app, or I'm sorry, from the background forward or from the ground app. The volume atmosphere is like all over, like you're inside of fog. So that's the one I had. So if you click on it, let me close this. Let me close all this stuff. You'll see this show up on the attributes. And I'm gonna open the Arnold Render Viewer here. And if I hit play, it looks like there's nothing there. But if you crank up the density, you'll start seeing some fog. It'll start showing up. You can change the color. You know, you just have to play with this. Sorry? Yeah, you just play with the sliders for the density. That's okay. So yeah, it's just adding the density. If you want it like back, let me go back to the render settings. And if you don't like it, you can right click on the name here. Just right click on atmosphere and break connection. That will get rid of it. If you use the other one, the AI fog. Let me open the Arnold Render Viewer. This is a little bit different, you know, and because our scene is so tiny, it's gonna be super touchy. Because if I think about it, let me just pause this to show you what I'm talking about. Show the grid. Each one of these squares is that'll be under my preferences, settings. So each one of those squares or unit is 1 centimeter. So the model here is probably like about 4 centimeters tall. So it's super small. So I guess if I grab everything and make it like actual size, let me see. Or I could change my units, I guess. Instead of centimeters, I can make it something more familiar to me, like foot. And say save. So now if I select everything, combine it, and make it at least a couple feet big, you know. Oh, I don't know what's happening with the text there. But anyway, that's at least a couple feet. Now if I go back to that fog, which is on my render settings, or come on, where are my render settings? So right here, and I turn on the preview, Arnold Render View, and hit play. This you can see it now. The background is kind of in fog, and then the foreground is not in fog. So it's kind of like the AI fog is kind of from depth from the back, and you can change it. Here it says ground normal. So right now it's X, Y, and Z. Z is into the scene in Maya. So if I make this be 0, and let's say I put 1 on the y-axis, the fog is coming from the ground app, and you can change the distance, and whoa, too much. Yeah, and this is gonna go crazy here. It's super touchy. So the bigger they're seeing, you know, if it's up to scale, like if it's human scale, that'd probably be better. But the AI fog is super touchy. That's why I always use volume if I just want to see my lights. But yeah, that's all there is to fog. It's not much. Sorry? I couldn't hear that. Yeah, no, it's pretty simple. Yeah, you just go to the render settings and add some volume fog. Render settings, yeah, if you don't like it, you can just always delete it, break connection. And here's volume fog. And then the settings are over here. Oh! Sorry. Okay, there we go. So, if it's on the render settings and the Arnold tab environment. So if you don't like what you have, you just right click on the name and say break connection. And to add it, you just click on the checker box, say atmosphere volume, and then the settings are on the attribute editor. So yeah, it's pretty simple. What was the other question? Was it somebody else had a question? Let's see. Let me look at the chat.
I have just one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just share my screen real quick?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I was just wondering if it mattered if the background was transparent.
It doesn't, but when you bring it to Maya, it might think that you want transparency on your objects.
Okay.
So it might give you transparency errors. So if you want transparency, I will leave it on. If not, it's easier to just put a white layer on the bottom.
Maybe.
Yeah, kind of the same color, so you can bleed the image, a little bit.
Do I have to get rid of these lines?
Well, if you want to see them, no. But if you don't want to see them on the object, I would. You don't want to see them?
No, those are just the lines on the UV.
Oh, you just use the same layer. Yeah, just paint them over them. I will just.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. Anything else? Anybody else has questions? No? Okay, let me do the roll really quick and I'll let you go. Before you take off, let me just. I keep forgetting to do the roll in all my classes. I guess it's harder with distance learning because it's not mandatory, I guess, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. I just do it because that's what I've been doing all the time. So let me see. I have. Oh, come on. Come on. Dang it. Sorry, give me 1 sec. Okay, so I have Clayton, Collie, Clarissa, Katie, Nanette, Sarah. Is that everybody? Looks like it is. Yep. I got everybody. So you guys have a good 4th of July. Have some good times. Celebrate independence. And I will see you. I guess I'll see you on Wednesday still. So, that's it. See you guys. Thank you. Bye. Thanks.